Okay, I think I have everything right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today's going to be our final master class of the 2022-23 season. I got to get that right. And I can think of no more wonderful finale than for us to welcome Elena Urioste with us today, all the way from England. And let's give a big hand to welcome Elena. Excited I get when someone who was part of this program throws some success and oops. Yeah, you know what? Excuse me, Elena. That was one thing. It was just all right, now we're there. I just kind of blew our speech, but there we go. I do at least one a week, so there we go. So anyway, I'm so excited with somebody who formerly was in our program is doing so well. I sent to your message about the week here, and I hope you all followed the link to look at her website. But Elena is a fantastic violinist, has been playing with so many of the major symphony orchestras as a soloist. During COVID, she and her husband Tom did a thing called the jukebox, the Uri Post jukebox, and it was every day on Facebook another tune to like cheer us all up. And people liked it so well that they had them do a CD. My favorite happens to be Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square. So, but all kinds of things of popular tunes as well as classic pieces. It was really wonderful. And they've gone on, and BBC Magazine has named them the classical power couple, which I think is wow. You know, is that cool or not? But I don't think you as power couples, but I think it, we wear it well, And she's also championed a lot of unprogrammed pieces that maybe have been forgotten or been neglected, and I think that's really important, as well as new music, and just has an amazing philosophy of life that she shares with others. So you'll hear some more from her a little later. And also runs a wonderful program called Intermission, which works with musicians and yoga and also mindfulness. And as you know, that whole thing about your whole mental and physical health and your whole well-being is so important to all of us. So, but first we're going to start out with some violin, and we will hear from Jiaray Shi. He is a student of Guillaume Combet. Jiaray is playing the first movement of the Sibelius Violin Concerto, and he's accompanied by Julie Kim. And we're going to turn it over and let Jiaray play for you and for Miss Urioste, and let's have a great class.
Yay, that was so fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm really blown away. That was such fantastic playing, and you seem so in command of the piece. And actually, I was going through my music, and like, I just realized there are so many things in this piece that I cheat, and you didn't cheat at all. And I was like, wow, he's doing it all. And I'm very impressed. You also have a killer fourth finger, which I was very inspired by, because mine is basically decorative. Yeah, so I had two sort of main ideas, and I'll be honest, I was sort of prompted by the Temple Prep faculty to incorporate a bit of kind of the other half of my life, which is yoga and mindfulness and stuff. But actually, genuinely, I think the two ideas that I wanted to talk about do actually slot into that quite nicely. One is like a physical thing that I thought I might explore with you, just a bit about posture, and maybe playing with the idea of, rather than kind of wrapping the body around the violin, thinking about bringing it to you a little bit more. You know, all of us, no matter our body type or how long we've been playing, we tend to sort of like, when you see a tree growing around something on a sidewalk, we tend to sort of, our bodies grow around our instruments in ways that are unique to us. But every now and then it can be really healthy to sort of take a step back and examine like all of the sacrifices basically that we've made with our body to accommodate this box. And start thinking about like how it can work for us rather than the other way around. So that's one idea. And then the other is, it's a more musical sort of conceptual thing, but I feel like in Sibelius in general, and this piece is included, people love talking about the idea of these super duper duper long lines. And I think that's great. He does these, you know, he spins these incredible phrases that seem to last forever. And we want that. But I think there are ways of doing it that still give the line plenty of profile, and sort of within a really long line or a sentence, we have plenty of inflection and punctuation and just places to recharge, basically. And I think we can actually do that from the inside, so with the breath. And when you start thinking about phrasing from within, like literally using your lungs, it tends to influence the hands in a really nice way. So you don't have to think necessarily about changing anything you're doing, or like adding commas or taking the bow off the string. But when you start thinking about playing from within, literally, that sounds a bit hokey, but playing from within, it's like a very natural way of shaping the lines in the long run. So those are the two things I wanted to play with. I wanted to ask you also if there were any sorts of, if there was anything you wanted to work on in particular or explore, or any specific challenges in this piece or in your playing in general, anything you wanted to chat about.
I think nothing in particular.
Okay. Do you find this piece, there's no wrong answer, but do you find this piece tiring at all?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about anyone else, but for me, this is one of the most tiring pieces, just my muscles. I feel like whenever I play it after every phrase, I'm like, oh, like I need to just like put my arms down and shake them out.
Yeah.
So that's another, I mean, if you don't feel that way, great. My hat's off to you. But I think there are, and it's, of course, it's tough to, I mean, I really wish I were there with you in the room so that I can hear. I'm like, a lot of this is, of course, is speculation over Zoom, and, you know, the sound gets so squished. But I think my impression is that we could breathe a lot more, both physically and metaphorically. So maybe, could you just play once, the beginning once more, up until I'm looking at my, I don't know if we have the same part, but to big, it's like 4 or 5 lines. And while you do that, I'm going to get a glass of water because I forgot how exhausting talking over Zoom is. So I'm listening, but I'm just going to get water. So go ahead whenever you're ready. Good. Great. So another thought I had, and I think maybe this can be, we can play with this using breathing, but so, okay, actually this fits into the idea of we want a really long line, but we want to give it profile. So basically, if you think of all of the notes or all of the like groupings under each slur as a word, we want to enunciate each word in a way that makes your sentences exciting for the listener. You know, if we always spoke in a monotone, giving everything equal importance and everything equal sort of time, we would probably zone that person out. And now I'm like very aware of the way I'm speaking, that is probably quite monotonous. So with that in mind, I would love for you to feel your intervals more, if that makes sense. I'm worried, sorry, this is the first time I'm doing it. This was a stupid decision. The first time I'm doing a Zoom on an iPad, so I don't know whether I have the sound settings right. So if it sounds awful, just let me know. But even just the first, I want to feel that 5th drop. And then, and all that, the half step. And then, of course, the most, can you hear the violin at all?
It's cutting out a little bit, but
A little bit.
it's okay.
You can pretend what I'm doing is incredibly beautiful. It's probably not anyway, but and then the whatever you're fingering is, like, really feel the augmented 4th. The visual I like to imagine sometimes is like a piano, actually, like what the hand has to do to step, or you can imagine like if your fingers are little legs and like how far they'd have to step to get to that interval. Just thinking about the physical distance between the notes and how that might affect how much time you take in between them. Like, I don't think some of these intervals are meant to be easy. They're not all meant to take the same amount of time. So something that I like to think about, especially when I'm going for like a shift or if something is quite busy, is it takes as long as it takes, you know, and you've got this very cool, uncompromising rhythm, and that sort of creates this timeless atmosphere. And then, I mean, this is the very definition of rubato. You can take, then you give back. So you just start to play around with that, feeling the distance between your intervals. And then on top of that, I mean, this is like an optimal phrase for me, at least, to practice breathing. If you think, I mean, again, there are no wrong answers, but if you were to think of assigning one breath to each bow, how would that feel? You know, how would it feel to do the first bow on an inhale and the second bow on an exhale? How would it feel to do the opposite? Exhale, And again, because we're on Zoom, you probably can't hear any difference, but it will start to feel different in your own body. And from within, it will begin to inform what's going on with your hands in a really subtle way. But I think it's quite an interesting thing to start to experiment with, especially when you play at the high level that you do. Maybe do that much again and start to play around with feeling the distance between your intervals and maybe feeling one breath per bow or one breath per a couple bows. Just start to think of literally breathing with your phrase from the inside out. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Like I can already, I swear I can hear a difference through Zoom. Okay, now do that, but don't let your shoulder breathe for you. Keep your breathing in your lungs. And actually, so this is something that I also like to talk about, and I have to remind myself as well. Often when we're feeling the desire to be musical and free and express ourselves physically, we get parts of the body involved. For violinists, often it's the shoulder. Sometimes we start moving around the scroll. And it's not inherently bad, but if it's sort of getting in the way of what you actually want to say musically, then it is bad. It's also bad if it causes extra tension, which of course we don't want. So what I often suggest, because the idea is not to be still and unmoving and, statue-like, but to direct that motion, that impulse to be free and move our body, direct that inside. So whenever you're feeling, moved, to move, take a breath, either in or out, and see what happens. So it's a cool kind of experiment to start keeping the outer frame of our body more still and move the activity inside. And then it can really actually directly affect the sound rather than in some ways impeding it, if that makes sense. Okay, try one more time. Great. Sorry. Really great. I loved the first bit of the phrase. I would say when you take this to the practice room, spend it shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. Go through the first phrase a few times and just try every combination of breath you can think of. You might feel a little lightheaded when you're done, but it's like an exhilarating sort of, lightheadedness. You can even do it without your instrument as a way to, if you find yourself bored on the train or something, you can sort of sing the music to yourself and thinking I can't hum and breathe. You know what I mean? See how it would feel mentally to inhale and exhale, in different ways. Then when you go to the G string, I think there's, he knew what he was doing. I think he knew that it would take the violin G a split second longer to speak. So I think actually you can what am I trying to say? It's like you're using your bow in an E string way on the G string. And I think you can use your bow in a G string way, which is to say you can take the time to carve it out and get to the bottom of the string without sacrificing the rhythm. If anything, I think actually the rhythm like gets snappier here. Sorry about the sound. You know, there's that extra split second of catching the string, and then make sure you feel your intervals even down there, even when they're going by quite quickly. Can you go from somewhere around there? Yeah. Great. Better. Okay, this is a great place to think about bringing the violin to you a little bit more. So it already, that sounded already better to my ear through the screen. But I wonder if it would sound even more brilliant and even more, I guess extroverted is the word. I wonder if you're losing a tiny bit of sound, like aimed towards your belly button. If you think, okay, again, we don't want to feel sort of like flabby. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that when you sort of tuck into yourself, it's because you want to get more intense. And I totally understand that and identify with that. But what if instead of sort of bringing the violin in, you took the energy that you use to do that and put it in your stomach? That's what my teacher in high school used to say. He, without knowing anything about yoga, he sort of taught me accidentally about using my core. And people love to throw that term around a lot, but it really just means like engaging the center of your body. And a way that I like to sort of encourage myself to do that is to think of both sides of my waist being really long, which shouldn't be a problem for you because you're very tall. I am not tall, so I always have to extra remind myself to be as tall as possible. So if you think of, it's not like you're not doing like a six-pack abs bodybuilder pose or anything like that, but there's like a light engagement in the front and back and sides of the center of your body. So just do that for a minute. Yeah, and then can you also imagine that you're squeezing like a ball or a brick or a rolled up towel or something in between your legs, and that sort of, yeah, you don't have to change the way you stand. Just imagine that there's a bit of like strength or resistance in your thighs, and then that sort of activates the whole center of your body. And now actually put your violin down for a second, like that. No, sorry, just by your side. Yeah, relax your arms, good. Think about tall waist and active thighs. Good, and now just a few times raise and lower your violin with that activity still in your body. Great, and actually don't even involve your chin, just sort of bring it up to your shoulder. Yeah, and put it back down. Isn't it funny that like when we get the cue, bring the violin up, we automatically go like that? We can't help ourselves. Just try a couple more times. And then maybe just imagine what it would be like to play feeling so natural. Because my thinking with this, you can relax, is playing the violin is so weird and awkward and asymmetrical. And for me, at least, it can be quite uncomfortable a lot of the time. So I need to remind myself what it feels like just to stand well and as symmetrically as possible. And of course, it's not possible to play the violin exactly like that. But when we remind ourselves what neutral feels like, or what normal feels like, or what optimal posture feels like, and then we invite the instrument into that feeling, over time, we can bring our violin playing a bit closer to the feeling of just standing in a really nice way. So that's something that I think you could play around with, because you're so tall, your arms are so nice and long and like made for the violin. But I think, regardless of the shape or the proportions of our body, we all have to make allowances for it. So it's just sort of getting to know what our neutral feels like, and it looks different for everyone, and using that as our framework, then inviting the instrument into that. And in the long run, our bodies will be so much more happy, because it only gets ouchier as you age. That's yeah. Let's go one more time from that G string phrase. If you can remember to sort of keep the abdomen engaged, keep the waist nice and tall. And whenever you think of it, just maybe notice what your chin is doing, notice what your shoulders are doing, and see if you can bring yourself gently back to this feeling of just standing really nicely. The visual I have sometimes is, like a marionette puppet that someone is holding up by a string, that someone is just lightly sort of drawing you up to the sky. And you don't have to do anything. You just sort of like hang there and let someone else do the work. Try that, and then go on for a while until the good. I don't think it's my imagination. I can hear something different. There's like a more there's more of an openness, I think, and it's not just a volume thing. It's like you sort of cleared some stuff out of the way, so that the sound, I mean, on a very sort of basic level, rather than your sound going down from the F's, it's going to the back and up in the room. And of course that's important, even in a small room at Temple Prep, but like particularly when you get to a big hall, you definitely won't do yourself any favors by playing down. You want it to be as out and horizontal as possible. So for you especially, you already have the advantage of being up. Just like allow the sound to travel in the direction it's destined to already. And then also I think what it does for your, I mean, of course it's like easy to claim credit teaching a masterclass, because generally everyone is like a bit nervous the first time, and then they're not nervous the second time, so everyone plays better the second time, and then the teacher gets to feel really self-congratulatory. But I think there's something about, when you stand up like this, I picked the worst positioning for, but when you take the posture that you did that second time, to me, it also seemed like it freed up your left elbow considerably. And in a piece, well, especially that passage with all the arpeggios where you're just sort of like going like this for a while, it would seem to me helpful that you'd want sort of a clear pathway from first position all the way up here. And I think if you're sort of down and folded in on yourself, your elbow, I mean, at least my elbow, like gets stuck. So yeah, picking my teacher Joseph Silverstein would talk about this actually with both hands. For the left hand, finding a positioning for the instrument that allowed your elbow to move unimpeded like that. And the same with the bow, actually, is when you had a lot of string crossings, he would always encourage me to find a place to put my elbow that meant I didn't have to move it. He was all about sort of reducing movement wherever possible. So when you find sort of again, that feeling of comfortable neutral, you can start to experiment with, just subtle differences in where you place your arms so that you can kind of have access to more places at once. Does that make sense? Rather than having to make all these micro movements, which, it's fine, but I'm lazy. I love to just pick a place and stay there. Good. Can we go on from there? And can you really now? This is a great place to think of. The impulse definitely is to. For me at least, is to go in and like, especially as you go up the fiddle, but to really think of taking that activity, that energy, putting it in your stomach or whatever you want to think about, your center, your core, your leg muscles. Another reason I'm so big on that is because if you're engaging your midsection or lower half, it's weirdly impossible, or at least difficult, to also be tense up here. So actually try that. So like, imagine you're squeezing something between your legs, engage your stomach, and then lift your violin up and like try and be tense with your shoulders. It's somehow hard. It's like you've already used up your tension, but in a good way, because you've moved it down. So that's why I love doing that. If I can think of moving the center of my energy or activity down, it frees up this bit, which is the bit we need. And it sort of ensures that it at least has a higher chance of being relaxed, if that makes sense. Okay, go from the bottom of the scalp. That sounded great to me. One thing you could think of, I can't verify either way whether or not you're breathing, because I just can't, I'm too far, I can't tell. But this to me is a good, I definitely get stressed in this passage. So whenever I get stressed, my sort of mantra to myself is take a breath, take a breath, take a breath. So, you could try breathing with each of just have the music sort of inspire your lungs to keep moving. And then actually, it's funny that I was just talking about the idea of putting your elbow in a convenient place. You might play around with moving it like a smidge, basically so that it's at A string level. For all the, I'm not going to demonstrate this, so that you have to move it less. But like I said, it sounded good from here. Just little tip. Let's do, while I'm thinking of it, totally kind of tiny and perhaps an important little detail, but it just stuck out as like the only non-totally authentic thing in the score. So you know how at 3, the next section, it's this funny sort of cross rhythm. Then the second time, I don't know whether it was an intentional choice, but the rhythm is different. Did you do that on purpose?
Did I do it differently or did I do it the same?
It sounded a lot like the first time.
Yeah, that was uncanny.
You can just check. I mean, I've always thought it was so a great mystery to me why they're in different time signatures and written differently. But that rhythm doesn't translate. You know what I mean? It is at least, I think, different the second time. So you can fool around with that. But let's go to the first one. This is like, to me, a textbook phrase where you can breathe, and that will help punctuate what is otherwise just such a long line. And I mean, it's glorious, and I love the way you play it, and it's so passionate. But I think we can, in some ways, I think it makes a long line even more exciting if within it there are these, you know, you're not breaking up the line, you're not putting a period or an exclamation point in it, but it's like these, it's just the way you would inflect your sentence. If you were really excited about something, you'd sort of be like gasping for air because you just can't contain your excitement. So maybe try a little bit of that. Also a great place to bring the instrument to you and move your energy as low down as you can. Good. Sorry. So it's a funny figure. These da 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 da, because we want to do these lines and we want to make a thing out of that. But for me personally, it's there's like an extra movement happening in your body, and I couldn't quite see where it was coming. Like maybe an extra movement in the bow arm that actually, and it could also be zoom, but rather than da, 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 there are like these like little extra bulges or something. So could you try staying sort of as still as you can bear, and definitely keeping the left side of your body still. And this is like such a common thing that I've noticed in myself and other players when we get excited about something or like want to do something special with our bow. We often move the violin, and generally what that does is takes our target further away from us. It's sort of like our bullseye is moving. So in general, when we're feeling really expressive, take care to keep this side still, because we've already got one thing that's moving, and this sort of just makes the chance of hitting our target somewhat less likely. Keep this side really still, and then take that impulse to do an extra fancy thing with the bow and just try and breathe through it, if that makes sense. Try one more time. Same thing. I mean, you can keep experimenting with breathing and shaping even more dramatically, but just on a sound production and articulation sounds very clinical, but yeah, in like, if each one of those were a word, I now understand the words really nicely, and they fit the sentence. I think that might be a really helpful thing for you, just thinking about when you get excited, what's happening in the body. I mean, for all of us, not just you. When we get excited, what's happening in the body, and is it serving the sounds we want to make? Because I feel like such a huge percentage of being an instrumentalist is like getting out of our own way. Because especially as string players, we've got not one, but two things, like two pieces of equipment that we have to battle. When you think about, I mean, obviously singers have their own set of difficulties to overcome, but their instrument is inside them. And wind players and brass players, they at least, they blow into the thing and it's one thing. But we've got two things, and there's hair and there's strings, and there's just so much like stuff. So if we can simplify as much as possible, or think about like what our intentions are with each of our movements and our, all the physical things that go into playing, it can really be helpful in terms of letting our voice through more easily. That was really a convoluted way of re-explaining what I just said. That sounded great. I'm aware that people have to run off to rehearsal in like 5 minutes. So I just wanted to ask if you had any like specific questions or things you wanted to work on, or if there was anything you wanted specific that you wanted to do in the last few minutes.
Could we turn you over to everybody and see if anyone has some questions for you?
Oh yeah, of course.
Is that okay?
So wait,
Jiaray?
let's
Okay.
give you a round of applause.
We're gonna-
That's such an amazing part.
I'm gonna make you feel like you're on an amusement park ride for a moment here as I play with the camera.
Oh wow, there's lots of you. Hi.
Here's everybody. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Everybody, wave to Elena. Yay. Okay. Anybody? Some questions? No. Oh, we're quiet. So we do have a few people here who are going to be attending Heifetz. Usually, you're at Heifetz with intermission, right? When
Yes.
are you there?
Well, so sadly, I'm not going to be there this summer, but Melissa is. and
Melissa will be.
You'll like her better than me. Don't worry. She's just the most wonderful person in the world. And I think she's there the last 2 weeks. So weeks 5 and 6.
Is that when you guys are there?
Yeah. Oh,
Audrey? She doesn't remember when she's there. Okay. She'll be. And great. And are there other? I always like to plug intermission because it's just such an amazing thing. Are there other opportunities for these guys over the summer? A lot of these folks have camp commitments, but I just thought let's let them know.
yeah. So I think that's our only in-person festival. And actually, Melissa and I, we've recently had a big talk about part of the reason we started intermission, which for those of you who don't know is basically like yoga and mindfulness for musicians. And a lot of what we were just talking about in the Sibelius, like how can we start to get in tune with our bodies? It's not just about, doing downward dog and making silly shapes, but it's about learning what our bodies do, how we can strengthen them, how we can mobilize them, and then how we can use them in a way that best serves our music making, how we can breathe, how we can not move, get rid of anything extra, sort of simplify and just make the whole experience of playing our instruments, which is really, really hard, as comfortable and as enjoyable as possible. So when we started intermission, it was sort of because it was it was what we would have wanted for ourselves when we were your age and practicing loads and, everything, you're starting to learn more difficult rep and more pieces at one time. And we didn't have anything like that to sort of help our bodies deal with, these mounting pressures and workloads. So that's why we started intermission. And now, we're further along in our lives. I have a kid. We're both super busy. So we're sort of reevaluating what we want intermission to be, both for ourselves and for people now. So we hope to have more in-person things in the future, both workshops and retreats. But for now, we're doing a lot online. We've got loads of free videos on YouTube. If you search for intermission, music, movement, mindfulness, we've got all these different videos of exercises, stretches, ways to sort of think about all these things with their bodies and minds with regard to our playing. And we're on Instagram as well. But if you write to us and let us know like what would help you, we're always, wanting to find ways of doing more for our friends and colleagues and students.
Bravo. Anyone else? Well, I'll jump in because I lay on these guys what I think was one of the coolest things anybody has ever said, and you said it for us a few years ago, and that is about the most impactful thing that was said to you as a student that Mr. Silverstein said to you about making sure that you have everything for a fulfilling musical life. And I plagiarize you like crazy, and I'm not ashamed of it because I think it's the right thing and the right balance for everybody. And
it was good advice, and I revisit it all the time. I think when I started at Curtis and all through for as long as I can remember, I had like a single goal, which was to be, a fancy violin soloist. And I was just so determined to be a soloist. And he just said to me, Elena, you have, and you should keep building the tools to have a fulfilling life in music. And at the time I thought like, oh, well, does he think I'm not good enough to be a soloist? And I totally missed the point at the time, which was that you want to be as well-rounded as you possibly can in terms of the types of music you play, whether they're concertos or solo or orchestra or chamber music. You want to be a good communicator. You want to listen well. You want to learn to teach. You want to learn to do stuff that has nothing to do with music, but everything to do with music. You want to have as broad a toolbox as possible so that you'll be happy. And as I go through life, you see that, certain bits of the music profession are amazing and certain bits are really, really hard and not amazing at all. So you just want to have like a lot of things that you can call on so that, when you're feeling not amazing, you can reach for something else and it will make you feel, uplifted.
Well, thank you so much. I know you have a real important performance of Coleridge Taylor, among other things, with BBC Proms coming up. Is that streamed?
I think it will be streamed, actually. Yes, I think it is at least on BBC TV. I'm not sure what that means for streaming outside of England, but I will do some research and let you know, Mark.
That's really cool. Elena has played all the major concerti. I know for a long time you've frequently played the Lark Ascending by Vaughan Williams. If you can't tell, I'm a real fanboy for Elena and Tom and the whole jukebox thing, because it's just such a very cool thing and wonderful music. But also she has been advocating and performing the Coleridge Taylor concerto, which was one that was sort of ignored by a lot of people. And that's one of those things that I think is real important in playing new music, playing music by people who were forgotten, and we all want to encourage that. So anyway, we'll try. I try to pass on when we know things are available, since you're you're a couple thousand miles away from us all. But thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to get in front of the camera too.
Oh, thanks everyone. I wish I was there with
Thank
you.
you,
In person.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
And we have to get to see Tico sometime. That's all.
Okay,
request.
next time.
My
he'll teach the
request.
class.
Great. Okay.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Thank you
Bye,
again.
everyone. Take care of yourselves.
Everybody get to rehearsal.